Hi everyone, welcome to our second episode on Cognac. This time we're taking a little bit of a deeper dive with Didier from the Maison de Whisky in Paris. How are you going, Didier?
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thanks. So LMDW have curated this Through the Grapevine series of cognacs. Careful cask selection by you guys. I always see that LMDW sign as a kind of marker of trust. Like I know what's gone into the bottling, whether it's a whiskey or cognac. So it's very exciting to be able to bring this range into South Africa and also expose it to the rest of the world. Now, yeah, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive and just looking at the bottles. I mean, there's quite a lot of information on these bottles, and I think I'll let these bottles kind of unpack the questions for us. So I see four colors here. I've got an orange, a green, a yellow, and a red. One clue is they all seem to list different appellations, different crus within the Cognac region. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, in the last episode, we mentioned that the French are very tied to this concept of a sense of place for where the grapes are grown. And so all the grapes are grown in the Cognac region. But even within the Cognac region, they've decided to kind of have these sub-regions, appellations that they call crus, C-R-U. And so these different crus have their names. So there's Grand Champagne, which is kind of the most famous one and the most highly regarded. Petit Champagne, which is right next to it. You've got a small bit called Borderie. And then you've got a larger area called the Bon Bois, Fin Bois. And so these kind of different regions will have slightly different styles because the grapes growing there will have different subsoil. The conditions are different, and this is part of this concept of terroir. The grapes will take flavor from their environment, and so we will have kind of limited areas that we define to be Grand Champagne, Petit Champagne, and so these are written on the label since we always do single casks, and so they're coming from a single region. Usually, cognacs, the big houses will blend them together to have complexity and to have more volume, but we decided to kind of bottle them separately. So basically, the colors on the label will refer to one of those sub-appellations, and they're actually the same colors that you can find on the official map from the BNIC Cognac.
Okay, I'm sure I'll throw that map up in our post-production.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be, I'm looking from the outside in, what a lot of people understand terroir to some level, and wine has brought it forward a lot. Those would be different geomorphologies, probably slightly different soil types and little environments, different growing conditions, producing different character in grapes. And therefore you expect it to translate into the spirit that you make in some way. And that's correct, is it?
Well, and it's just like in Burgundy, you've got the growing appellation, but you've also got tiny little vineyards that have their own appellation, like Romanée, Ponty, Richebourg, things like that. So it's a very French concept, and we even do it for our rums, for example, in the Martinique. We have these dedicated areas. We really define which regions can produce quality grapes or quality cane in the Martinique, for example. So it's a very French concept.
So if I just getting led by the label again, on the back of this particular bottling, I see that the aging is listed as wet cellars. So wet cellaring, can you tell us, that's obviously something that you guys wanted to express about this bottle. What can you tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to put as much information as we had on the back labels. So yeah, wet cellars are going to be, they're not actually wet, but they're more humid. So the conditions are more humid. And so the aging will be a little bit slower, a bit softer. We're in very different conditions in the Cognac region than in the American whiskey, for example. Where they have hot summers and cold winters. It's a lot more stable in Cognac, so we can have spirits aging very, very long. I mean, 50, 60. I've had a cognac that's 100 years old from a barrel. I mean, it's at some point the blender might actually stop the aging if it gets really, really long. And they'll put it in, for example, in damigens, in these kind of huge, big glass bottles to kind of stop
Because the
oak
alcohol
influence.
is starting to slowly die off, and
Yeah, and
they
the
don't want to
alcohol is
get
going
too
down
low.
as well. That, and
So
sometimes
yeah,
the
really
taste.
interesting. I mean, I think a lot of those cellars would have been underground traditionally, and they're wet because of the subterranean water kind of leaching into the cellar. Lovely, humid, very temperature stable conditions.
Yeah, in a
Very
drier
slow
cellar,
aging.
for example, in a drier cellar, you'll have the aging will be a little bit quicker. So maybe for the younger cognacs, for example, they might prefer to put them in dry cellars. And a lot of times, the big houses will blend these together. They won't just stick to one or the other. But because through the grapevine is a single cask range, it's always one type of cellar, obviously, one vintage, one appellation.
Yeah. So tropical aging is something we cover elsewhere in the channel and is expressed quite explicitly in our portfolio. Wet cellar aging is kind of almost the opposite. I mean, it's very stable, very slow. I guess you're getting these slow reductive reactions and oxidation and these development of other tertiary compounds from so much time together, these rancio notes. And you expect sort of rounding and smoothness to come from those kind of aging conditions. So if you see something really old and wet cellared, it's it's something exciting. You've positioned with that information to sort of expect something from that environment, which is what I like about having that detail on the bottle. The other thing I see here is we got the grape variety of New Blanc, which is great. We got the region, obviously. Slow reduction during aging. I mean, that's kind of a function of wet cellaring. But then no sugar added. Dosage, no sugar added. So I was interested to learn that cognac and brandy allow certain degrees of coloration, sweetening, and even flavoring. Now, single malt whiskies had caramel. A lot of single malt around the world has E150A caramel coloration to it. Tell us a bit more about this in the cognac scene.
Yeah, I mean, when you see no sugar added, you kind of expect it to be, it's like, of course. But actually, a lot of the houses that make blends, because I mean, cognac it's really, they have a blending mentality. The big houses really blend thousands of casks together, and so all these additives that they use at the end before bottling, they're going to be kind of used for adjusting. The idea is not to add caramel coloring to make it look older or to, add what we call boisé. Boisé kind of has these it's kind of like oak chip maceration. It adds a little bit of oakiness and tannin and vanilla flavors. The idea is not to make it
extract from oak. Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it's like you're making tea from oak chips, and
yeah,
the idea is not to make it taste oakier per se. It's more of an adjustment. So like when you have blends that the consumer is expecting to be the same from one year to the next and from one batch to the next, when you're blending all these casks, sometimes you'll notice at the end, well, maybe it's a little clearer than usual, so I mean, it might add a little color, or maybe it's a little less round than usual, so I'll add a little sugar. And I mean, they're not going to add like 20 grams of sugar or make it a liqueur or anything. But the idea is just to kind of round it off and give it a silkiness. And this isn't allowed in single malt or in whiskey in Scotland, for example. But that's something regions kind of has traditionally in that kind of blend mentality. And what we pick through the grapevine, we usually tend to go for more authentic, no color, no sugar, no boisé.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what trends emerge, because I have seen some voices within the cognac industry kind of shouting against those tools, but obviously those would be more artisanal producers, and they're not trying to reach a certain global distribution footprint and a certain level of consistency. They're trying to talk more to to a smaller, more niche production, and that's fine. I think there's space for both in the industry, aren't there?
Exactly. I mean, there's some people want something kind of stable that they can always come back to, that'll always be the same, and other people, they like diversity, which is on the other end. So diversity, this is what the single cask approach is. It's every time it's different. It might not even be the same producer. It might not be the same vintage.
Yeah.
And so there's room for both. I mean, I think
I just like whether it is say sweetened or unsweetened, for example. I like that to be explicit in the bottle, because this helps me understand. I'm not left wondering, well, is this richness from the barrel, or is this mouthfeel from oils, or are we dealing with sugar here? So I like that sort of transparency, and hopefully we would see producers going more that way, and I appreciate it being offered on the Through the Grapevine series. Okay, well, thanks very much, Didier. I hope everyone had a little bit of light shed on the cognac scene. I think we will dive into other expressions and tastings down the line. But Didier, we really appreciate your input as usual, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon on cognac or several other spirit-based subjects. So thanks for joining us.
All right, great, and hope to see you in Paris soon.
Cool, man. Cheers.